Welcome to Data Science Perspectives. This series focuses on analytics and data science professionals from across industry to learn about how their career unfolded, what skills they look for when hiring, and what trends they think are coming next. I'm your host, Bill Franks. Let's get to it. Welcome to this episode of Data Science Perspectives. I'm your host, Bill Franks. Today I'm going to be joined by Patrick Moore of Merck. I've known Patrick for many years as he was a regular participant in a analytics leadership program that I managed. He's someone who's always willing to jump in and provide his perspective and help guide a group to consensus on a topic. He's currently the AVP of Human Health Data Strategy and Governance at pharmaceutical giant Merck, and he's one of those rare people these days who's actually spent his entire 30-year career with the same company. He initially started with a variety of lower-level analytics roles spanning forecasting, promotion analysis, and sales analysis. He then progressed through roles as director, senior director, executive director, and now AVP, with all those roles focused on analytics topics. Recently, he's pivoted to focus also on a data strategy and governance perspective. He has a bachelor's in psychology from DeSales University and a PhD in applied research and evaluation from Hofstra University. And with that, let's welcome Patrick to the show. Hey, Patrick, thanks for joining me on the show today.
So glad to be here, Bill.
One thing I like to start out asking every guest is, what originally drew you into the world of data science analytics back in the day?
Somewhat of a long story, but at the end of the day, what it came down to is I followed my passion and my interests. So when I went into undergraduate, I was undeclared. I took courses in a number of different data domains, and I found that I had an interest and passion in quantitative methods in psychology, economics, and business. So that then led me to a PhD in applied research and evaluation. And in the course of that degree, I found that I really had a passion for analyzing real-world data to inform real-world business decisions and actions. And then from there, I went into doing health services research for managed care providers and acute care hospitals. And that led me into commercial analytics in the pharmaceutical industry. So it was all about passions and interests and what I felt I was competent at and could make a difference doing.
So I don't know if we ever talked about it, but when you did your PhD and your research and your dissertation and such, did you actually focus on healthcare with that as well, or you got into that area after you were in the workforce?
I got into the healthcare as part of my internship for my PhD. It was my internship.
Well, you did something very, very few people do, which is you came out of school, you got a job with a company there at Merck, and then you ended up never leaving. So,
Right.
What is it that you found so compelling about the industry and the work you were doing that's enabled you to stay there for a couple of decades?
Yeah. So first, it starts with the mission of Merck. It's a company whose mission is using cutting edge science to improve and save lives of patients throughout the world. Merck has an absolutely fantastic culture. It's a culture that puts the patients first. It's a culture that has a high degree of ethics and integrity. Very much its core that employees treat one another with dignity and respect. And also, it's an environment that's super conducive and puts a lot of focus on employee professional development and growth. So it was a wonderful environment. And the other element that I'd mention is I pretty much was able to start with Merck right as they were beginning to grow their commercial analytic capabilities. So I was pretty much at the right place at the right time.
I know some industries tend to be the competitors are more isolated from each other and there's not a lot of moving back and forth. Other industries, it's like everybody bounces back and forth between the competitors all the time. So were you more of an outlier being here all the time? Like were a lot of your coworkers going back and forth between other pharmaceuticals or even other places? Or is it really a company that lots of people just stay for the long haul?
It's pretty much the latter. It's pretty. There are a few that would bounce between various competitors, but on the whole, I'd say it's an organization where you will see some very long tenured. They tend to stay, Bill.
Well, I know you've seen the analytics capabilities and usages evolve a lot over the years. So
Mhm.
not even necessarily at Merck in specific, but the industry
Yep.
as a whole. Maybe explain some of what you've seen change and even provide a little bit of an overview for those who don't know. Like, what would commercial analytics be within a pharmaceutical context? Because I know a lot of folks would think about, the classic clinical trial work and the drug testing.
Hmm.
But what you're doing is something different, and it's another important component of the industry.
Hmm. Yeah. So there's three huge changes that I've witnessed during my 30-year professional career. Um, And I'm certain that what I'm about ready to describe isn't likely very unique to the pharmaceutical industry. The first is around the number and type of roles that I see in the commercial analytics space. When I first started at Merck, you had statisticians, a couple operations researchers, and an IT professional that would help you gain access to necessary data. Now, today, you have data strategists, data analysts, data stewards, data engineers, data scientists, data product owners, machine learning ops folks. It's just incredible to see the specialization that's occurred. Now, we understand the drivers of that, right? As we look to scale, we've created sophisticated commercial analytic capabilities, the different platforms that exist today, the tools that are being created. You need that type of specialization, but it's amazing when I sit back and reflect. The other area that I'll point to is on the data side. When I first joined the pharmaceutical industry, there were one or two data suppliers that were serving pretty much the entirety of the industry. Now, today, there are literally hundreds of different data suppliers. With that, we even have individuals who have, as part of their job, to stay on top of, to stay aware of new data suppliers as they come onto the scene, evaluate those new data suppliers. You can literally go out there and purchase inventories, pages upon pages of all the various data suppliers that are out there. So that's another change. And then the last one I'll point to comes down to business sponsorship. So as you mentioned, clinical trials, those are ingrained in pharmaceutical. That's just core to drug um, development, right? When I joined commercial analytics, my business sponsors, business partners at the time, it was very much a prove it. Show me that you can use these data assets, make me confident that I can use them to make important business decisions, take important business actions. Now, when I look 30 years later, and it's embedded in the culture from the top down, I need data and insights to make all these different important business decisions. So the degree of business sponsorship for use of commercial analytics has gone from prove it all the way to I need it for all important, appropriate business decisions and actions.
I love that line. Prove it to I need it. That's a really nice. It's a nice transition, and one, by the way, I think is fairly consistent across other industries as well. I think you and I both came up in the it was a prove it. I remember having to convince people that it made sense to even use a model to say target customers for marketing as an example. And
Mm-hmm.
now even the low end tools will have some type of model automatically built in, and no one would buy it if it didn't. So I've seen that. I guess again, not specifically at Merck, but in that industry in general, what would be just one or two examples of the kind of analytics that fall under the quote commercial analytics umbrella versus the versus that clinical trials umbrella?
Yeah. So there's very much, and this is in most businesses, you have forecasting models, right, to help understand potential of products and expected performance of products from a short-term basis for the long-term evaluation. You have analytics that help to inform um, your go-to-market approaches, analytics that help you identify customers, healthcare professionals that are likely to have interest in your products.
So it sounds like it's really what a lot of other companies would call their business analytics. It's the sales market facing analysis of your market, your customers, the opportunities, et cetera.
Exactly.
Um, so the traditional business side of analytics versus that clinical industry specific side of analytics.
Yes. Yes.
Well, what do you think if you look back? Obviously, you've had a successful career, given you've not only stayed there, but worked your way up many layers in the organizational chart. What's one or two traits that you have that you think has helped you succeed in building that career?
Yeah. Um, so first, I'd have to put at the top of the list. I'm very fortunate. I have the ability um, to listen to my business partners, to really be able to, and I credit a former mentor of mine for sharing this with me. The ability to separate a business customer's needs versus their wants, and be able to identify what it is that they really need at the end of the day from their data and analytics group, and then be able to deliver a quality product to meet that particular need. Second, and this is important, very important when you're in a big corporation over a long period of time, I very much focused on gaining the trust of my business partners, um, making them understand that my intent is always to provide them with reliable, valid, best available insights to help them make a better business decision. And making that connection with them, gaining their trust, um, helps to ensure a long term working relationship, but also helps to ensure that the insights that you're delivering are used for full value. Okay. So those are two. And then the third is, and this has been most important over the past 25 years, is the ability to build and lead high performing data and analytics teams. Identify good talent, um, and keep them with keep each person with a set of priorities, that they feel challenged, that at the end of the day, when they deliver their work, they feel as if they're valued, and give them the opportunity to grow and develop. And yeah, so those are the three that
You
come
know,
to mind.
the first two you mentioned about listening to your partners and then gaining their trust, the way you described them, I think they're interrelated in that I know in my experience, a lot of times, you're the expert in analytics. That's why they're coming to you. And they think they know what they need. And they'll ask for, I want ABC. I want a report that has exactly this.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take the order taker mentality and deliver exactly that, as often or not, once they see that, they're like, "Yeah, I don't know, I want this instead," and you
Correct.
spiral through days or weeks of iteration. Versus, I think what you're saying you would do is say, "Hey, I know you're asking for exactly this, but given the question you've given me, what if I gave you this instead?" And if you have that confidence and they have that trust, they might say, "No, you're right, Patrick. That's exactly." that is what I need. Yeah, go ahead and do that. Is that kind of where you were heading with those comments?
Exactly. And I take a somewhat similar approach where I'll listen to them. I'll say, well, this is what I heard you ask for, but let me take a step back. Let's first have a discussion around what is the question that you're trying to answer? What is the decision that you're trying to make? Let's get aligned on that. Help me really understand that, because I might be able to provide you something even more better than what you're asking for. And so it comes down to, at first, having their trust such that you can have the dialogue with them and they're willing to share the business decision they're trying to inform.
It is interesting to me how it doesn't matter whether you're in consulting where what you said is officially the job or whether you're just moving up the ranks in a company. The people who succeed in analytics, I think what you've just walked through, it's so important, especially for people young in their career, students, to understand that that's really a big differentiator is focusing on that understanding and on getting that person again to trust and partner up with you, because analytics is always it's a support role in that sense, right? You're not the one running the business, you're supporting the people running the business, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's that indirect effect that you have to figure out how to maximize.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly.
So I know in the last couple years you've transitioned into an even more data strategy and governance role. Maybe more is not the right word, but more into that area on
Yeah.
top of the analytics you've traditionally supported. So, what are some of the new skills you've had
Mhm.
to learn there, and some of the ways that seeing that side of the house and now overseeing part of
Mhm.
that has made you rethink the way that you're going about creating your analytics?
It's been fascinating, and it's been a great developmental journey for me. As I mentioned, in the pharmaceutical industry right now, we have literally hundreds of data assets. And with that, on the enablement side, right, you want to make sure that those assets are findable, accessible, interoperable, that they're privacy protected, and that they're very secure. So, with that comes a whole set of capabilities, policies, processes that I had to become very familiar with, from contract workflow automation systems to data cataloging, data lineage, on through data access systems, policies, procedures. Um, it's been quite the learning experience over the last few years. And at the end of the day, it's making sure that your data analyst, data scientist can get quick, easy, compliant access to the necessary data.
And of course, it's not that some of those policies, procedures, and security protocols weren't in place historically, but I'm guessing, like with every other industry out there, with the rapid advancement of the cloud and of some of the newer
Mhm.
technologies, it necessitated lots of various updates and tweaks to what had been historically, acceptable policies, but that suddenly became outdated.
Yeah, yeah. For me personally, Bill, it was more of, I was always on the user end, and then I went behind the curtain and had to learn everything that goes along with making sure a data scientist can find the necessary data assets, quickly gain access to it, and they understand how that asset can be used. And yeah. Mhm.
I'm assuming getting behind that curtain a little bit, you probably end up with a little more sympathy and understanding for some of what you considered slow or painfully moving processes from your past.
Yeah, that's very well said. It is. Yep. Yep. But it all comes down to, we stayed center. We stayed are staying very centered on secure, privacy protected, um, findable, accessible, interoperable, and that's the key. That's the key. And always looking at your processes, your capabilities, um, with those goals in mind. Yeah.
So tying in, you taught, accessible, interoperable, enhancing the capabilities. Again, not necessarily specifically at Merck, but in general, how do you see AI getting integrated and utilized within the pharmaceutical industry? Any interesting use cases or applications that folks who weren't in the industry wouldn't necessarily have thought about?
Yeah, it's been incredible to see the Gen AI, how quick it's come onto the scene, and this I'm speaking here broadly across all industries and its application. And when you look specifically at the pharmaceutical industry, there are potential use cases across the entire value chain, from drug research, discovery, development, manufacturing, operations, the commercial analytics side. And I encourage anyone that has interest in learning more. There's some fantastic white papers that are out there. If one just goes and searches Gen AI use cases in the pharmaceutical industry, um, there's a wealth of information out there that's very informative.
So, do you have any, let's say there's, obviously people earlier in their career than you. What tips might you have in terms of how to build a long-term career at a single company? Compared to some of your friends who maybe bounced around a lot more, like me. What do you think is something to focus on if you want to stay at one place?
Yeah, yeah, and I'll speak specifically here to a bigger corporation. Okay, so stay focused on delivering value for the corporation that you're working for. Always take a step back when you're doing something and think about, how does this connect to business value for the organization that I'm working for? You need to be also very willing to grow, to adapt, to learn. Big change always are occurring in corporations, and you need to be adaptable as change occurs. And you need to be willing to embrace change, learn new skills, take on new responsibilities. Not be afraid of the change, but embrace the change. The other element, you need to be, especially true in a large corporation, you need to be able to collaborate across multiple different stakeholders. May they be your business partners, your IT partners, your your partners over in other divisions of the organization, your various support functions. May they be legal, compliance. You need to have strong collaborative skills, and you need to be able to partner, form strong partnerships with those various stakeholders. The other thing, and this is one of, in the course of having career development discussions with my various team members, oftentimes they want to talk about a specific career ladder. And where I take it, and it's the approach that I've used with myself, is I describe staying in the intersection. And if you think of the Venn diagram of, what are you as an individual passionate about? What do you think you're really good at? And what do you think the business values? If you stay in the intersection of those three and are willing to grow, adapt, and change, um, oftentimes your career, what my observation has been, will unfold quite nicely.
I think that's some good advice. I like the point about having to change too, because it's not a stretch. In fact, I'm 100% sure that what you'll say is, if you go back to what you were doing when you started, while the problems are vaguely similar that you're addressing, you're using different and more data from different types of systems with completely different tool sets and even new algorithms. Like literally, it's not at all the same as when you started. And if you had just continued to do what you were doing, you probably would have been let go 20 years ago.
Exactly. The other thing too, building upon that, be curious. Um, be curious in terms of learning more about the business, that's one of the things that I personally love to do is in the pharmaceutical, there's so many different components to the business side. I've always been interested in learning more. May it be learning about how marketing works, how the different sales teams work, how our account teams work, and then understanding more about how elements of the manufacturing. So with that curiosity and trying to gain a deeper understanding of the business allowed me to appreciate and see opportunities where analytics could have even more value. And then with that, obviously, I'll stay curious and maintain your interest in learning new platforms, learning new tools, learning new approaches.
Outside of the advice you've already given, is there one specific thing you would encourage a fresh grad or very early career person to focus on as they are trying to ramp their own career up?
Look for those areas. It goes back to where you think you can make a difference and that you're passionate about, that matches your passions and your interests. I can say from my perspective over my 30 plus years in analytics, I don't think my job has ever been the same one year to the next. And my job has never felt like a job. It's not like I wake up and say, I have to go to work. It's something I enjoy thinking about, and I enjoy to do on a day-to-day basis.
Well, count me as one of many people who will be very envious to know that you've managed to achieve that state for 30 straight years. I've had times like that, but I've also had times not like that. So I think that's amazing for you that you were able and back to it speaks to the circular logic, how you've been there for that long. When you're in that kind of a mindset, it's easy to stay. Um,
And
no,
I'm fortunate to be in a company that as we started the conversation, Bill, very much fosters growth and development. And I was at the right place at the right time because commercial analytics was just starting out. So I was able to be part of the growth and shape the growth in some regard. Yeah.
well, before we run out of time, because I know you've got a lot of things to do, what would you close with in terms of just one specific trend that you think is going to be really hot in the analytics data science area in the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
We're on there's elements of this today, and I'm super excited by it, which is augmented analytics, where AI, ML, NLP are all brought together in an integrated, automated system approach that allows for your data prep, your curation, insight discovery generation, as well as provisioning of insights and recommendations to a broad audience. And I'll play out a scenario of how I can see this working. So imagine, and I'm going to go to another industry, that you are the product manager responsible for truck sales for a particular US company. You come into your office Monday morning and you say to your machine, how were sales over the weekend? Did I have any pockets of weakness? With those pockets of weakness, tell me what was driving it. Tell me what I might be able to do about it. The machine comes back and says, we looked at sales, and they were just below expectations. There were a number of regions in the country where sales underperform expectations. In one set of regions, we saw that demand was strong and as expected, but supply wasn't there. And then the machine asks you, would you like to divert supply to those areas in order to address that demand? And the machine says, oh, by the way, you have the excess supply in order to do that. Would you like to execute that action? The machine also says, in certain areas of the country, demand was below expectations. And based upon best available information, we believe a consumer campaign of XYZ type using XYZ channels would likely bolster that demand. It would cost X amount of dollars to execute that campaign. It's in your budget. Would you like to do it? And you say yes. And the campaign goes, and then execution begins. Now, if you think about what I just described, there are systems and processes that do all those steps today, but they're not integrated. That would have been multiple conversations with analysts, engagement with dashboards, engagements with marketing agencies, your manufacturing, your supply chain. But the world I described, I could definitely see that on the horizon.
Wow. That's a great example. I love that. That's a perfect way to close as well, Patrick. So thanks so much for your time today, and I'm glad you were able to join us on the show.
Thanks again, Bill. Really appreciate the opportunity.